Open the gate! Oh, I'll do it. Hold on. There we go.
Hello again! Looks like you're here to learn about country building. In part 1, we left off about a quarter of the way through the 1800s. Now remember, these British colonies had now survived uprisings from the French, a few hundred or so freezing winters, and invasions from the Americans. But inside the cities, trouble was brewing. In the early 1800s, the colonies were governed by small groups of wealthy officials who had been given special privileged positions by the crown.
The king! King! God bless him! God bless him!
In a young and poor country where the sons of rich and favored families alone receive education at the public expense.
They shaped public policy and taxed the poor while failing to provide for them.
How are we governed if a body of thieving officials can sit in their seats with all the power of the law behind them, doing what they like?
Where the many must toil to support the extortions and exactions.
These elites abused their power and did not represent the interests of the people.
What would you call that sort of thing, Joe? Wouldn't the right word be tyranny?
Where the hard-earning...
They're rascals, embezzlers, incompetent, but they're a body of the crown. And the crown can do no wrong.
But that's monstrous.
It's the law.
Well, that didn't sit well for the people.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
The road to democracy wasn't easy. In 1837, a group of reformers paraded through the streets of Toronto, destroying property and businesses. In Lower Canada, there was a similar uprising. However, the rebellion there was a lot more violent. In 1838, Lord Durham accepted the position of Governor-General of Canada. He was tasked with investigating and reporting on the rebellions.
And what is the news from the city?
Not good, sir.
Rioters were killed, and some protesters even burned down Parliament.
Not everyone took to the streets, however.
Lend me some of your books, will you?
Help yourself.
We can be loyal to the Queen and still be free. I'm pledged to constitutional reform. With patience, we'll get it.
Some sought legal means to claim the power for the people.
In 1839, he submitted his report, known today as the Durham Report. He recommended giving more power to elected representatives. He also proposed making the two provinces into one.
Let's not forget that all of this was made possible thanks to the Queen.
Does your Majesty really agree that your Governor-General, the Queen's own Viceroy in Canada, should be overruled by the elected members?
Yes, Lord Melbourne. We assure you we do agree.
You mean to say that Victoria of Great Britain would give up her royal power to some obscure politician from Montreal or Toronto?
Lord Melbourne, Monsieur Lafontaine and Mr. Baldwin are trying to bring harmony to the colony with this... What do they call it, Lord Melbourne?
Responsible government, ma'am.
Responsible government. Just so. Now, suppose we do not assent, Prime Minister.
Well, that could mean another rebellion in the Canadas.
Responsible government. Our Governor-General controlled by an elected assembly instead of by us. It's a Canadian idea.
1849, responsible government had become a reality.
Lord Elgin, a successive Governor-General, allowed the first bill to pass, which had been drafted by the responsible government, thus acknowledging and solidifying its legislative power. There was, however, still squabbling in the colonies.
Monsieur le Président, Messieurs de l'Assemblée législative.
Speak the language of this country!
And the future was yet unknown.
The work of uniting Canada was as vast as the country itself.
Although Upper and Lower Canada had now united, the dream of creating a country comprised of all the colonies was the dream of Sir John A. Macdonald, Sir Georges-Étienne Cartier, and other fathers of Confederation.
Confederation will cost French Canadians their nationality.
Monsieur, together we will form a political nationality independent of our origins.
Diversity will be Canada's strength.
The
not join Confederation unless our rights are respected. So you want a new province? Then you'll have it. There will be a place for your people in Canada.
British Columbia won't even think of joining Canada without a wagon road through the Rockies.
Ask for a railway. We are building a country, after all.
Confederation could not have happened but for him.
And lots of alcohol.
Careful, careful. That champagne cost a fortune.
Mr. MacDonald, do you plan to bribe the entire delegation?
Our methods may differ, Mr. Brown, but our objective is the same.
My objective, sir, is honest talk.
And mine is to win.
Gentlemen, enough. We must convince the Maritimes or there will be no confederation.
Separated, the colonies are isolated and weak.
But united. Just imagine. To the east, the Atlantic provinces, then Upper and Lower Canada, across the prairies to the Rockies and beyond. A new country made one by a railway from sea to sea. Gentlemen, the time for union is now. I ask you to take the dare.
The Charlottetown Conference set Confederation in motion. On July 1st, 1867, Sir John A. Macdonald became Canada's first Prime Minister.
Now, Canada's road to democracy may not have been easy, but it wasn't exactly an American blockbuster revolution either. Think of it more like a series of reforms that eventually led to a beautiful floral arrangement that we now call a country. The British North American Act, known as the BNA, was later renamed Confederation and makes up a major part of the Constitution of Canada. The British North American Act united the provinces and divvied up the provincial and federal responsibilities. So let's look for a second at what Confederation actually did. The Act entails the original creation of federal dominion and sets the framework for much of the operations of the Government of Canada, including its federal structure, the House of Commons, the Senate, the justice system, and the taxation system. In another video, we'll explain how these all work. Not everyone was celebrating the formation of Canada. The Métis people were and are descendants of Indigenous and early French Canadian settlers. They resided mostly in Manitoba and were treated as second-class citizens by the politicians in the East. They formed themselves a provisional government to resist the Canadians.
I hold myself ready to conclude arrangements with the Canadian government if I judge them favorable to us all. Indians, French, English, and Métis. All of us.
Louis Riel was a spokesman for Métis rights and the founder of Manitoba.
You'll try to keep Canadians out.
Canada tries to enter the territory.
That would constitute an invasion, Mrs. Schultz. I would have to take up arms to repel it. Bloody treason! That's right.
Two significant uprisings against the newly formed Canadian government took place in 1885, led by Louis Riel. The Northwest Mounted Police, which later became the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, were formed as a result of these uprisings, and later used to police the whiskey trade in Saskatchewan and Alberta. Hence the foundation of Fort Calgary, Fort Macleod, and various others.
Give us this day our daily bread.
Louis Riel eventually faced trial and was hung for treason by the Canadian government. But he is still seen by some as a defender of Métis rights, a French hero, and a savior. Expansion west continues, and the dream of a railroad that can unite a country becomes a reality. The story of the railroad cannot be told without mention of the 15,000 Chinese laborers.
All you have to do is go down in the tunnel with the nitro and set the charge.
Okay, I do really good. You see.
All right.
who faced low wages and harsh conditions in order to lay the tracks and make the Canadian dream a reality.
Gently, understand. Any little bump and that stuff will blow.
Damn, that's the third one we lost this month.
I went back in again, but I lost many friends. They say there is one dead Chinese man for every mile of that track.
This is the 1986 issue with the $5 Canada bill. The face design features Sir Wilfrid Laurier.
Here you'll find Sir Wilfrid Laurier, the Prime Minister of Canada from 1896 to 1911.
And in the final years of the 19th century, with a country established and a railroad built, the Canadian West opened up for mass settlement. And over 1 million immigrant settlers waved goodbye to their friends and families and all that they had ever known in search of a new life. Many came from England and the United States.
Although some settled in the east or in town, most came west, far from any settlement.
But overpopulation and high unemployment in Europe caused many to leave their homelands for the prairies.
Here in the wilderness, they saw an opportunity and a new freedom for themselves and their friends.
Over 170,000 from the Ukraine, 115,000 from Poland,
started to develop their long-cherished dream of freedom and opportunity.
And tens of thousands from France, Norway, Sweden, Russia, and the Netherlands, among many others.
They brought little money, but they brought much strength, and little else is needed in a pioneer.
These immigrants were critical to the formation of what we know as Canada today.
Children and parents worked together in the struggle to make homes in the free country which they had sought.
Remember that Canada is a country of immigrants.
Thus, their pioneering is the same story of stern diligence that is repeated many times throughout the history of Canada's growth.
And if you are studying for the citizenship test, you too play a vital role in helping shape this great country.